last week we had a three-way fight for first between Fischer, Verstappen and Boardman. Today we're at Monza, where only a couple of seasons ago Verstappen dominated the competition. Hello everybody, welcome back to the GT4 and BMW M2 Championship. I'm Tim Peck, joined the booth today by Joshua Devonsteer and Christian Strick on the broadcast. Joshua, it's currently raining. Do you reckon we're in for an exciting race today?
I mean, first of all, it's Monza, so yes, and it's raining, at least for now, so yes. Only 3 minutes left of practice, so it gives us a few minutes just to have a bit of a chat, bit of an introduction before we go into quali. But yeah, no, I think that's an obvious question. I mean, you know, in famous turn 1 coming up into the race itself, you've got, hopefully, I say hopefully, I mean, I'd quite like to see some rain. You know, it's, you know, we have, you know, I remember a couple of the old jokes, you know, from about RCI in the past, you know, rain constantly incoming and all the other acronyms, and looks like we're living up to our name now, so, or at least the joke names. So, yeah, no, I think it's going to be some great racing, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it.
Well, we're not called Rain Club International for nothing. But of course, for those of you that have been here before know that I absolutely love Monza so much that I often talk about it even when we're not actually racing at Monza. So personally, Josh, I'm so excited for today. This is easily one of my favourite tracks in the game. I'd argue actually it's probably my favourite track at all. And there's so much potential here. There's opportunities to overtake as soon as you get into turn 1. There's 2 or 3 long straights, depending on how you want to look at this. I'd say there's 3 long straights where you see cars like the BMW and the Chevrolet that really kick up and come into play. And there's also a lot of sweeping corners as well, which will benefit cars like the McLaren too. So I think we're in for an absolutely great race today. And personally, I think all the race can do is spice this track up even more.
I mean, yeah, I mean, again, heavy braking zones, very slow speed corners, high speed corners, as you've said, favouring a whole different types of cars. I mean, hell, we have a Ginetta in first as well, which, you know, for what, I mean, I consider Monza a power track, okay? The Ginetta's not really a power car, but obviously, at least in these conditions, it's making up so much time in the slow speed corners. I mean, it's only just ahead. I mean, Stevenson's only just ahead of Fischer by less than a tenth of a second. But ahead is ahead, and the Ginetta's in first, so that goes to show a fair bit there.
Well, hopefully Stevenson can transform this into qualifying in a minute, but I have to agree with you, a Ginetta was not the car I thought we'd see in first place currently. And bringing back to what we were talking about last week as well, you got Foch in the KTM, currently sitting there in 4th and only a 10th and a half off the time of Stevenson. So some cars today that you really wouldn't think would show up and do well at a track with some really long straights. I mean, they're already starting sharp. Of course, this is just practice. We're about to head into qualifying in a minute or so. And qualifying is 20 minutes long, of course. It's 10 minutes for each type of car. We'll start off by, I think we send out the GT4s first, but I'll probably be proved wrong in a second. The GT4s will go around the track for 10 minutes, and then the M2s will come out and do their 10 minutes of qualifying as well, without having the other cars on track, which we talked about this last week, Josh, and I've got to say, I think it's good. In a way, it's a little upsetting that not all the cars are on track at the same time, but I think it's quite nice, especially for the GT4s, that they don't have to worry about running into some really slow traffic on a fast lap.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially here at Monza, there's, you know, if you come across another car in your quali run, you don't have a lot of space to squeeze on by. Although I will make a correction. I remember last week it was the M2s that came out first, if I remember correctly.
Come on.
So I can't let you get away with that. I can't let you get away with that one, Tim. I'm sorry, but. Well, I might be wrong too, so we'll find out in just a moment.
As you can tell, we're super organised with this championship, and we know exactly what is happening at all times. Of course, like you said, we will find out what is happening, but I think you're right. I think Christian also mentioned that the M2s do go first, so we'll see how that all turns out. And well, before we get into qualifying, looking at the practice alone, of course, you can't tell too much on practice because people are doing different things. Some of these guys will be doing racing practice, some of them will be doing qualifying practice, and some of them are just getting used to the rain for the first time. But going into qualifying, Josh, who do you see coming out on top here? Is there anyone today you're looking at in particular to do really, really well?
Well, you can't discredit Fischer. I mean, absolutely dominant performance last week at Paul Ricard. We were talking about cars we're surprised to see somewhere near the top. We said the same thing about Foch last week as well in the KTM. You know, Paul Ricard, that big long straight, we didn't expect the KTM to be up there, but Foch put it up there across multiple races. So it proved it wasn't a fluke. You know, they were able to keep the consistency going between those two races. So, yeah, I mean, I can't discredit either of those. Andy Boardman being down in sixth is a bit of a surprise to me as well, because Boardman is typically a very, very quick driver. But again, race practice versus quali practice. And as we're going into qualifying, it looks like we actually have a wet session, at least it's starting out wet, set to dry up within half an hour. But that would still mean it's wet for the GT4s coming out.
Well, I think you might have actually won the bet, because Tom Bryant is the first to leave the pit lane, which means the M2s will be setting their qualifying laps first. So you win this round, Joshua. It's the M2s that go before the GT4s in qualifying. I was caught out yet again on that, but Tom Bryant coming out of the pits almost instantly is going to have a huge advantage here, because, well, the one thing is you always want to sort of be towards the front in qualifying anyway. It means you get the most laps in, you can squeeze more laps into that 10-minute gap. You have clean air, you're not worried about anyone in front of you messing up and you running into them, and especially in the rain, you don't want to be running behind someone. Let's say someone catches up to Tom here and gets super, super close. All that Tom's going to do is kick up water in their face, and it's going to be so hard to see on the track. The visibility is going to be really poor in this weather. So honestly, going into this qualifying, I think Tom Bryant's got this idea right. Get out on track as fast as possible.
Yeah, having having the clear air is important as well, especially after a few laps. The track's going to dry out. I'm going to call Tom out a little bit, because Tom was actually in the comms box here before we went live. Because again, a little back end things with organising these races, just a few things clearing up. Tom reckons they have a really good chance here in the M2 class, and the times showed it in practice. So a lot riding on Tom for this one, you know, just to try and get those times out there, try and get up the top, put a banker in, and just try to push the car as hard as they can for the conditions. Because that's another good point. Do you take, like this line here, going over the green part of the curb? In the dry, that is something you can totally do. You can push those track limits all you want, but in the wet, those curbs become very slippery. Is that something that you chance, or do you stay off the curbs, drive it more conservatively, and hope the people around you make a mistake? How hard do you push in that situation? And this is something that Tom has to start thinking about as they're starting to put in what is essentially going to be their first lap. This is still the out lap, so yeah, anything could happen.
Well, I think my answer to that would be set one safe lap, you know, just get around the track as fast as possible, not risking it too much, keep off those curbs, set one lap where you know you've got a time on the board already. It doesn't have to be the best time ever, but you need to have a time on the board that will put you in a fairly high spot, I'd say. But then after you've done that, I mean, you've probably got 3, maybe 4 laps remaining to set the fastest time you possibly can. And that's when you really start to push the curbs. You take as much as you can. You really, like we saw Tom doing there, you ride on the green stuff and you risk it. Because then if you spin out, you still got that lap that you set initially to fall back on. But what they have to be careful, especially in these M2 cars, is that the lap times, they're not very fast. So you know, they've got 10 minutes to set the best lap they possibly can. Honestly, I think they're getting 3 attempts at best here at a fast lap, and then most likely a lot of these M2 cars are going to either run out of time, or they're just not going to have that tyre performance left in them to set the good lap they want. So for me, what this qualifying session is all about is juggling your tyre performance and just seeing how many laps you can fit in and getting the best out of the laps you get, because realistically, Josh, they're not going to have a lot of time to set a good lap here.
No, I mean 10 minutes isn't a lot of time in the first place. But as you said, the pace of these cars, you know, isn't entirely up there with the other classes in the game, and the wet is going to slow them down as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're on the right lines there. Set a banker lap, you know, get a safe lap in, and hope that puts you anything better than last in that situation is a plus. Coming around to Scary now for Tom. Obviously, we have nothing on our timing boards, you know, since no time has been set. And was that the validation we just saw there? Tim. Just going over Ascari, I think they might have cut it just a little bit on my Delta. It has come up as red. So I think, talking about banker laps, Tom has just thrown theirs away.
Yeah, I don't think that's ideal for Tom. I'm not sure if that's a full invalidation, because I know you can really ride that curb, then you can basically almost cut the entire corner off. The problem Tom run into though is, even if they've not just invalidated their lap, that's going to lose them so much time, because if you hit the sleeping policeman at the complete wrong angle, it throws off your car, you can't accelerate straight away, and there actually you can see that Tom Bryant did get to keep their time, and it has set a 2:12.0, but already Bock has just taken them off the top, although not by much, to be fair. So maybe Tom Bryant didn't lose as much time as I thought, but that is the risk you run, is if you cut that curb too much, you really throw off the car's momentum, and it's really hard to get that M2 back up to speed on the straight.
Yeah, I was actually talking to some friends in one of my own voice chats before hopping into this one, before hopping into the box, that, you know, these cars are very, as you said, they're very momentum based. It's very, once you lose the speed, you know, these are heavy cars, they don't have an awful lot of power, so to get them back up, you know, you have to drive them almost like an old F1 car in a way, you know, just try and keep as much cornering speed as possible and use that to sort of slingshot you out, such as we just saw Marshall doing that, coming out of Parabolica, putting the car into provisionally P9. 3.5 seconds behind the pro class leader of Ripper. Waldecker just going into second place there. But still, some 4.6 tenths, 4.7 tenths off of Ripper. So Ripper putting in an absolutely flying lap there. When compared, you know, when we saw Bock take the top spot from Bryant pushed down to P4. Dom Healy in P5, almost by a full half second compared to Bryant. So it seems like the rain has just kind of thrown all these cars into the mix, and I mean, there's still 5 minutes of qualifying to go, so, you know, don't discredit anyone here.
Yeah, and I think another factor that's going to come into play is obviously the rain's slowly and over time getting a bit lighter, which means those track times, they're going to get a little bit faster as quality goes on. As Tom there goes way too wide, and that will be an invalidation. Tom was 5 tenths up on that time as well, so that would have been a good contender for pole position. Unfortunately, though, like I said, these are the laps where you can really push the car to the limit, see where you can gain the most time, but you do run the risk of invalidating your lap or messing it up, and that's Tom there just showcasing that, in that, you know, exploring the track limits a bit, but maybe a little too much in that sense. Bock is about to come around the final corner now. They're onto the start-finish straight. They're currently massively up on their time by 7 tenths. This will put them on pole if they can hold this together, and they have. A 2:11.3 for Bock puts them on provisional pole for now. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Joshua, about how Tom reckoned that they were going to do really well, and that they were going to be the fastest out on track today, personally, I need to see more from Tom now. They're currently 7 tenths down on the fastest time, and I think if Bryant wants to keep those claims, they need to speed up a lot more, as Ripper now about to cross the line is going to improve by 4 tenths a second and put themselves on a 2:11.0. Are we about to break into the 2:10s?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, as you say, Tim, we are currently drying out the track. You know, the rain has stopped falling, but the track is very saturated, and every single car that goes by on the racing line is just displacing water and creating that all-important dry line. The GT4s are going to absolutely love it. But yeah, the GT4s are going to they're going to love the dry line. Those cars are really going to sort of need it. But yeah, no, Bryant really having to pull something out, a full second down at this point in time. And no, it's the invalidated one that we thought that invalidated the first, and that is going to play to the detriment of themselves. Jurashek in 14th position currently, so far up on their time by a margin, but going off of the Parabolica, parking the car and returning back to pits. I wonder if they just missed their braking zone there, just going in. I mean, it's very easily done, especially in these conditions as well. You know, you hit a puddle, car aquaplanes, brakes don't work, and then, you know, you go, before you know it, you're in the gravel trap. So, you know, all important questions.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of places on the track. I mean, a lot of people regard Monza as a very easy track to drive. And I'd agree. I'd say it's one of those tracks where it's easy to learn, hard to master. There's a lot of places where you can go wrong, like the final corner. It's because you've got that long straight before it. Really easy to miss your braking marker, and then you just shoot across, and like you said there, you have to park up and basically return to the pits. Tom Bryant on a very quick lap. We were talking about how they need to put out a much faster time if they want to be in pole position. Now, this isn't quite going to be enough for pole here, but it will put them towards the top. Tom Bryant goes into second with a 2:11.2. So starting to showcase what they can really do here is the number 42 car at the moment. That is a much better looking for Bryant right now, Josh.
Yeah, it seems to be that lap they invalidated was the kind of like a pin in their balloon in a way, and yeah, coming out less than 2/10 behind Ripper too. Ripper, we thought we were going to see into the 2/10s. It's still possible to see with a minute and a half left of quality. Some of the cars starting their last finishing their second to last, starting their last laps now. So we might still see that 2:10 in the qualifying here as Waldecker is coming around the final corner. Looking at my time sheet again, up on their time, not quite enough to challenge for pole according to my timesheet. But if they could hold this off, get the exit of Parabolica across the line, coming in, they will promote themselves up a place, half a second off the leader. Into provisional P4, a minute left to go of qualifying for these M2s, and again, anyone's for the taking.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about with Tom Bryant and where they've just placed themselves just under 2/10 off Marco Ripper. Now, for those of you that joined us in the last season we did, that was an entirely BMW M2 Cup car season. And Marco Ripper was one of the really dominant drivers. They won a lot of the races and put themselves right at the top of the leaderboard early on. So to only be 2/10 off Marco Ripper, I mean, that in itself is looking good for Tom. Well, Dom Healy is about to cross the line here. They're up on their time, and that's going to be a huge improvement, a 1.2 second improvement from Healy there, which will give them a 2:11.3, enough to put them in third place for now. And well, Tom Bryant's also improving on their time, coming round the final corner here, has got an absolutely huge increase in the delta here, and this is going to look really good. If Tom can hold it together as they cross the line, this will put them on pole position. We're just about to cross the line. See, enough for provisional a 2:10.9 from Tom Bryant. That puts him almost 2/10 ahead of Marco Ripper here, who's about to come around and set a better time than himself. We're about to see if Marco Ripper can answer back. Tom is not going to have another lap either, and Marco Ripper has gained time going around this corner. Is this going to be enough to get the pole position in quali here for the M2s? We're about to find out. I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
I don't think it's enough, Tim.
I don't think it is.
And yeah, staying in P2, no promotion in position there. I mean, talk about finishing on a high for Tom, finishing on a bang. I think Tom has the stream open, Tim. There's no way he didn't just hear us calling him out like that and, just popping in pole like that in the wet. Daniel Waldecker also about to cross the line, slightly up in their time, just not enough to make up into P4. Interesting note, the first 4 cars in the M2 class all within half a second, so it should be a very contested field. Up at the front there.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the dream finish for Tom Bryant right there. Set as an absolutely amazing time, the first and only of the M2s to break into the 2:10s, and it's just enough to hold Ripper off. But I mean, for those of you who can't hear Christian, because of course he's the broadcaster and we don't play his comms, but Christian personally very, very excited to see Tom manage to secure pole there. So we'll have to tell Tom about that after the race. But now it's time for the GT4s set their fastest laps. You can see now Graham Lilith about to cross the line. That's their out lap they've just done. So this will be the first lap they're about to set now. But we say this basically every week in this championship. You have the M2s, they drive around for 10 minutes, then the GT4s come out and basically look like Formula 1 cars compared to the M2s. They are just so much faster. And the other thing about a lot of these GT4s is cars like the Aston Martin, really, really good in the wet weather. So in terms of what we're about to see, I think we're probably going to see an Aston Martin dominant field for now with maybe, well, actually we do, we've got 3 BMWs, but I think the BMWs will also do good because, let's be real, 3 straight lines in Monza, they're just going to get so much time. So we'll see how this qualifying unfolds. Of course, we were talking about in the practice that top 7, a complete mix of cars, and including Ginettas and KTMs, which we really weren't expecting. So I'm quite excited to see how this session turns out, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, we last week was the same, and this week's no different. You know, we are at what I consider a power track. I think a lot of people would consider both Paul Ricard and Monza power tracks, but as you say, we're seeing a range of cars. You know, it's in the top seven. And I mean, I want to bring up a point you just mentioned there about the BMWs. We said this last week. You know, we expected the BMWs to do especially well, and I don't know if it was just me, but it was actually maybe slightly underwhelming from the BMWs. I'm not to discredit anyone driving them, but you know, the car, you know, we already know is a rocket ship in a straight line. It just didn't seem to sort of deliver on that hype. But maybe this track can be different. You know, you could set the car up for so many different scenarios at Paul Ricard. There is a fair few twisty bits, and you can set the car up to handle better in those situations as opposed and sacrifice the straight line speed. But Monza is mainly, you know, there's a range of corners, but you can make a lot of time coming out of the slow speed and getting up to speed as quickly as possible. And I think that's where the Camaro might have the advantage, because the corner exit acceleration, it definitely has a lot of cars on the grid. Maybe the top end isn't quite there, but you know, the Camaro does have its strengths. Andy Boardman going with provisional pole there. Andy Boardman going provisional pole there, but only just, I was about to say by 1.3 seconds on Stephen Key, but only less than a tenth of a second off of Verstappen. Verstappen, we know, is obviously very, very quick. There's Borodai coming in provisional P3 with half a second behind Boardman. Fisher coming up now to, I believe, is this Fisher's outlap or is this their... No, last lap, 15 minutes early. Okay, they've just finished their outlap and they're going onto their banker now, but with traffic ahead of them, and that might hold them up. Fisher obviously very dominant in the races last week, but can they keep this going for this week?
I don't want to just tell you you're wrong, but I'm not 100% sure here that Fisher's currently on a fast lap, because I'm not sure who it was, but someone around the Ascari spun and had to go back to the pit. So I'm wondering if that was Fisher. There was definitely a 7 in the number here, but we will find out shortly, because if this is Fisher's fast lap, then we'll see where they place. Of course, Fisher, probably one of the favourites to win in this race after their performance at Paul Ricard last week. But like I was saying when we opened the stream, Verstappen, last time we were at Monza, basically dominated the field. Like, there wasn't even a lot of competition there from Verstappen, and just they were ahead basically from lap 2 onwards, and it didn't look like they were threatened at all. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Verstappen again battling it out at the front today, and Boardman too, another person that shows up a lot currently in that provisional pole position. I expect we'll see perform well as well. And I think this is something that we talked about a little bit last week, and not so much this week yet, is you were saying how surprised you were that Boardman was only 6th in practice. Now, of course, practice, you don't really know people's speeds. That could just be that Boardman wasn't pushing it too hard. But the other thing is there's quite a lot of really fast, well-known races in this field. Like we mentioned last week, these GT4s, you've got Boardman, you've got Verstappen, Borodai, Daly, Fisher, Foch, Goat as well. You've got Verstraeten. There are some really big names in that GT4 field, and all of them have the potential here to set some really good laps, which I think we've seen as Boardman does another lap. They've just set a faster time, which will give them a bit of a distance. Foch comes across the line just 400ths of a second off. That'll put the KTM into second, and Borodai as well improves, putting themselves back up into third. But going back to what I was saying, there are some big players on the pitch today, and Foch just proving what they can do, putting the AAA KTM into second place. I mean, we weren't expecting to see that at Monza, let's be real.
No, not with the KTM. We were literally just talking about this, and something I wanted to bring up about Fisher. It seems to be you were right. The car that went off at Ascari does seem to be Fisher, and they are very, very competitive. Stevenson obviously heading the charts in practice, going in provisional P5, only half a second off of Boardman. But going back to what I was just saying there, with Fisher being very competitive, only 2.5 minutes to set a time, full stop. So, I mean, I have no doubt they will get a time in. As Hajek running right onto the curb there, a little bit onto the grass, coming into, I believe this is the second Lesmo. Fisher might have an issue with just getting a time in. The only driver on the grid to not set a time so far, as we're bouncing to Ascari, really riding over those sleeping policemen. That is Boardman, I believe, sat facing backwards, but Boardman currently still sitting provisional pole. They might, if they reset to pits and head back out, they might be able to get another fast lap in. If they head up relatively quickly, but it seems to be Fisher. We are coming around the parabolic and now heading down into the braking zone, apexing early. Run the car out wide to try and get the power as soon as possible. You see the inputs of the steering just struggling to try and find where the grip actually is to open up the power. Keeping a tight line there. Obviously, we see a lot of guys obviously run wide as well as the power gets applied, but keeping a fairly tight line. And going original pole, a full 10th of a second ahead of Portman. I mean, I was slightly concerned for Fisher in a way, but they've just kind of blown that out of the water completely. And wow!
Fisher doesn't need time, they just need one lap and that would be good enough for them. I mean, I agree with you. I was watching that lap and thinking, honestly, this isn't looking like Fisher's best performance, but proving us both wrong, Fisher goes and sets 203.4. It's enough to put them on provisional pole. And interestingly, you mentioned that Boardman was facing the wrong way on the Ascari there, and that if they return to the pits, they might have just enough time to come out and set a fast lap. They didn't return to the pits. They just pulled back onto the track and is trying to do a lap on the current set of tyres they've got, which I'm interested to see how it turns out. Personally, I don't want you suggesting going back to the pits, because if you spun the Ascari, chances are you scrubbed those tyres a little bit, and I think Boardman might struggle for grip, especially with the weather still being wet. I think Boardman might have missed the call there to return to the pits and get in one final safe lap, but at the same time, maybe they just didn't think they had the time to. Maybe they were reckoning they had to rejoin the track in order to get that final attempt at pole position.
I suppose in a way you're right, Tim, but in a way, actually, it kind of makes sense. The wet tyres are fairly durable. You know, they can actually run in the drive for a fair bit too. Say we have a race, it starts drying out. You know, these wet tyres, they heat up in the dry, like, there's no question about it. But they aren't as bad as one that might think. So maybe with the spin, especially with it being on a wet track, maybe there was, you know, it obviously reduces the amount of friction that you have. And maybe, you know, they thought the tires are just in a good enough condition. And plus, if you just continue on to that lap, you might squeeze yet another lap in and give yourself more of a chance and another attempt. Fisher about to cross the line. Can they improve on their time? We're about to find out. And no, they didn't. They didn't.
Oh my god.
But Foch as well. Foch coming around the parabolica. Looking at my Delta, they are up on their time, but is it going to be... Remember, KTM, guys, it's not the sort of car that we expect to really see on pole out here, but by 0.3 of a second, putting it ahead of Fisher. What is... Tim, what's going on? What...
Oh, I mean, that is just amazing from Faucher, putting the KTM on pole. Verstappen currently up on their time, though. Is this going to be enough to put Verstappen on pole? Currently, it's not going to be enough. It's only enough for P2 for Verstappen if they cross the line like this, and it is 1.5 tenths off Foch there, and that means we have a KTM on pole position for Monza here today. I've got to tell you, I'm certainly surprised by that, but to give you guys a bit of an insight as to what happened there, we were watching Fisher. Christian, our broadcaster, who gives us some prompts in our ears, was telling us that Fisher was about to set a much faster pole time, and they did. And I just happened to notice, as you were talking there, Joshua, that Foch was about 8 tenths up on their time coming into the final corner. I was like, oh my god, we might have a KTM on pole here. And I'm so excited to see how this race turns out now.
As I was chatting, I glanced up and saw Foch was up on their time. And again, Christian will usually put whoever's up on our little broadcast display, so as we're shouting down to you guys, we can kind of see what's going on. And if someone's up on their time, obviously Christian will prompt us by putting them on the stream as well. I glanced up and I didn't read the number as to how far they were up, so that poll was a complete shock to me. That's insane.
That was a brilliant time from Faucher, and to start on pole at Monza is definitely going to help them out. But for now, we're going to have a look at how the championship standings are after, I believe we've been through 2 rounds here. So we are going to see what the championship standings are looking like. First of all, we're going to look at the GT4 standings. These are the GT4 Pros as it stands. Fisher joined last week. They are currently in first place with 110 points. Verstappen just 2 points behind in second. Eraser in third place with 83 points. Boardman has 73 points. They're in fourth at the moment. Kui and Borodai are tied fifth with 63 points. William Stevenson, looking very strong today, has 59 points and they're in seventh. Verstraeten down in eighth, just 1 point ahead of Martin Lawrence, who's got 50 points and they're in ninth. And Svenchik rounds out the top 10 of the GT4 Pros. Samir Foch in the KTM is in 11th place at the moment with 35 points. Jordan Daly in 12th, just 2 points ahead of Tom Watts, who's in 13th in the Alpine, and Headwound in 14th place. Calassiod has, I believe, signed out of the championship. And these are how the silver standings are looking. Azure Goat, after some brilliant rounds, is currently in first place with 103 points. Bar in second is 96 points. Hajek in third, 78, 7 points ahead of Grim Lilith, and Adam Carlisle tied for fourth place currently. Vonja in sixth place is 54 points. They're 3 points ahead of Shrum in seventh, and Olin in eighth place will round out the silver drivers. And I believe everyone else has signed out of the championship.
Okay, so for the TCX cars, the M2s, we've got Benjamin Hellman in first place with 112 points, Marco Ripper with 93, Dom Healy with 87 points, Christian Bock with 75. In fifth place, you've got Andrew Verona with 68 points. In P6, you've got Daniel Waldecker. In seventh, we've got Venti Rashinov with 45 points, but trailing by only 2 points. In eighth place, you have Tom Bryant, who's looking to get a result this week. Well, sorry, for this weekend, this afternoon. Yeo is in P9, joint in points with 35, tying with Ardito in P10. Raphael Hull with 33 points sits in P11. P12 is Eric Arneck with 19 points, and Harley Chamberlain, I believe, is a sign out with P13. Now with the AM class cars, in P1, you've got Ian Marshall with 100 points. Trailing just behind by 5 points in P2, you've got Jurashek. And trailing just by 2 points is Jenna Sommer in P3. P4, you've got JB Hunt, only trailing by 1 point on from that. So very, very tight in the AM class for the TCX cars. You've got Dominicus in P5. Yet to score a point, I believe a new sign-up. So we'll have to keep an eye on this on these two races coming to see where they will sit. And you've got in 6th and 7th, you've got Stant and Roscam, who are, again, I believe, are sign-outs.
Well, those are how the standings are looking going into race 1 of Monza here today. Well, I'm going to take you back a little bit to my first ever race I commentated on, Joshua, and that was Imola. It was a wet race, not too dissimilar from this one, although it's slightly different. In fact, what I was hoping to talk about isn't going to come into play just yet, but it might in race 2. But what happened in the first ever race I commentated on was we started with rain, and throughout the race we then progressed into a completely dry track, and we got to see whether people started out on the dry or the wet tyre, knowing that they were going to be driving in the dry at some point. And it was really interesting to see the different strategies, and also just to see when the tyres really kicked into play in that race. But not going to have that for race 1 here in Monza. Might have it for race 2 though. You can see already that after 30 minutes the weather is going to get a lot lighter here, so maybe in race 2 it will go completely dry, but we'll see. It's very dark out in Monza at the moment. Visibility is going to be low, currently pouring down with rain as well. But we know Monza T1 can be a lot of chaos. It wouldn't surprise me today if we saw a lot of that come into play, because going down to T1, what I'm looking for is everyone just to sort of make it through in one piece. We've talked about how Foch is in provisional part at the moment. That's going to massively benefit them, because that's a good place to start. It's out of trouble. But going down, looking at people like Daly and Verstraeten, Lilith, and even just Tom Bryant starting with the BMW M2s at the front, they're going to be caught up in the middle of the pack, and if someone ahead of them goes wrong, it's going to be really hard to navigate through that first corner.
Oh yeah, this is the meme though, isn't it, Tim? This is T1 Monza. You know, it's one of the memes I saw was, "I fear no man, but T1 Monza, that scares me." And I'm sure a lot of the drivers are going to be feeling those vibes as we go down to start race one. And yeah, I mean, but then the gains that as you say, Tim, very difficult to navigate, especially in the dark. But if you can navigate it, if something does go wrong ahead of you, you can benefit so much from that. And I think that's what a few of these drivers are kind of going to be hoping for. I mean, looking down the order, I mean, from what we saw last week, Silver class, kind of there's no real change there. I mean, there's Yurgo leading Silver class, a bit slower than some of the pros, but given the conditions, maybe the Silvers just don't quite have the experience the pros do in these conditions. So starting P10 rather than, I believe it's P6, P7 last week. So definitely a bit further down the order, but kind of no real surprises. But looking to make up those positions at the start, given the track and the conditions.
Well, for those of you that don't know how the racing format works here, we start with race 1. It's a sprint race, 20 minutes long, and then we'll go into race 2 afterwards. That's double the length of time, double the points as well, but qualifying does determine the starting order for both races, which is why we talk about how important qualifying is on Thursday. And it's simply because if you have a bad qualifying session, you find yourself starting from a lower down position. You've got to start in that place for both races. It's not like you can improve in race 1, start higher up because you had a good race 1 and climb some positions. You have to start where you qualified, and someone that's going to be so happy with that is Foch, the KTM, starting on pole at Monza. It's not something I thought we were going to see coming in today, and as we're about to cross the start-finish line, we're going to see whether Foch can just hold on to this lead. They're going to have such a disadvantage on this finish straight here. We're about to set off, and you can just see already the KTM looks like it's probably about to get swallowed up soon, although actually it seems to be holding its own currently. Verstappen can't get alongside Foch heading towards the first corner. It's such a long start finish straight here, and it looks like Verstappen now is going to tuck in behind, get the slipstream, see if they can look for a move around the outside of the KTM, but already falling back to play it a little bit safe. You don't want to mess up at T1 here in Monza, and now you can see the cars threading through. There's actually 3 wide, a little bit far back. I'm hoping that doesn't turn out in trouble. Someone's had to ride the curbs, and will rejoin the track as safely as possible. And Foch actually falling behind. Is that Fischer that's coming up the side now of Foch? I think they've got under attack from Verstappen too. Where's that Bourman? Oh no, it's Foch's miles ahead. Foch and Verstappen pulling away from the back. I was like, hang on a second, Foch has changed colour, but Bourman here having to hold off Fischer behind, and who's that in 5th? That's really putting the fight to them, but they've knocked Fischer off the track. Fischer's gonna have to rejoin safely, and I've got to say, for T1 Monza, I don't want to jinx them, but that was fairly safe.
Yeah, I think I saw one yellow flag kind of pop up, but that was relatively clean, as we're seeing Shrub making a move on the inside there. I believe that's a Stephen Key. Stephen Key just using that Camaro power just to accelerate out of the corner. And kind of pull away, and that kind of puts Shum under attack from I think that's Tom Bryan. But again, these are 2 different classes of cars, so Shum I don't believe will be under a whole lot of pressure from the car behind, at least not for too long. Verstappen finding a way through in that lap 1
the exit
and that lap 1 melee, looking to get the exit onto the KTM. The KTM, again, we saw it down in T1, the KTM can break so much later. The cars pulling up directly side by side. I don't think Verstappen really has the chance to kind of pull ahead. The KTM using its agility just to kind of hang on to the inside. It needs a good exit. But again, that's a long run down to T1, and I don't know if that KTM has the legs to hold off the Aston for too long down here.
How is Foch still in the lead? We're going to see if that is still the case as we come towards the start, not the start finish straight, the first corner again. You can see Verstappen got a lot of slipstream, going to be able to pull alongside the KTM this time around, but again, the KTM just has such an advantage into the first corner here. Verstappen as well taking a lot of curb. That will slightly throw off the car and not help with the acceleration for the 747. So KTM, the little KTM that could, holds on for another corner. Someone there, Daly, almost got taken out by, I believe that was Carlisle from behind, missing their braking point and just managing to avoid them. And that's the real threat of T1 at Monza in the first couple of laps, is that you have that really long start finish straight, Josh, where you get so much slipstream, you just get really fast, you're going really, really quickly, and then you come to your braking point, and if you just slightly miss it, if you misjudge that corner, you can take out a lot of people, and it's basically falling.
no.
But here's Ian Marshall,
There you go.
kind of showcasing that, just a little bit late on the brakes maybe. The other M2 went to sort of cut across. I'd say they probably could have a little bit more room, although I'm not sure it mattered. And Marshall there spinning someone the wrong way around, but that for me is a real threat. It's not just T1 lap 1, it's T1 every single lap. The cars are still bunched up.
Yeah, especially if you come to a car that's, you could be leading the race and come to a car that's blue flagged, even a TCX car, and if you're looking to pass like further down the straight, and then you guys are still fairly close into the braking zone, you're relying on that car to hit its braking point, because those cars, they might not be as fast as yours, but they still carry a lot of momentum, as we see Verstappen still in the slipstream, trying to find a way around the KTM of Foch. Looking to take a look on the inside of Parabolic and losing it to slightly. Foch giving the room, preemptively seeing it. Verstappen sending, I don't know if that was intentional or not. I think it looked like from the steering inputs they maybe hit a puddle. Lost a bit of time. When you have a KTM cut behind you in a straight line and it's keeping pace, you know you had a bad exit. And that's exactly what Verstappen's got. But this will be what Foch was hoping for. Going side by side, Foch keeping the inside line. Just again, Foch doing Verstappen last lap too. Just holding the car in the middle of the road, keep it predictable, put the other car where you want. Verstappen out braking themselves, trying to defend, running wide, allowing Foch not only the lead back, but putting them into a gap. And also, that pushes Verstappen into the clutches of Boardman, who I would imagine before long will not take them long to catch up. Jordan Daly, going to Tom Bryant, on the stream. In the 42. Looks like Ripper has gotten ahead, obviously Bryant starting in pole for the M2s. Bryant has gotten ahead, so has managed to squeeze on by at somewhere along the way. But will Bryant be able to make it back? They obviously seem to have the pace. The track is going to get, well, the track is progressively getting dry. We do have rain falling at the moment, but as you guys can see, within the next 10 minutes, it's going to go from heavy to light rain in the top right hand of the screen there. You guys can see the track conditions, you guys can see the predicted weather forecast and the track temps and wind speed. So that's what these drivers are contending with right now. And it just seems to be that Bryant is just, has the pace to keep up with Ripper, but is it going to be enough to make the pass?
Foch read Verstappen like a book there. You saw going towards T1, started to back off a little early, made sure they definitely made that corner as well as they could, and Verstappen just slightly missing their braking point, overshot the corner and ended up having to use the runoff, which gave the KTM the lead back. And yeah, I had got to hand it to Foch there, absolutely saw that one coming and just prepared for it really, made sure they weren't too close so they didn't get taken out. Well, we're currently watching the fight between Borodai and Stevenson behind the Ginetta, trying to make moves on the BMW ahead there, and also Fisher and the Aston Martin just lurking behind, waiting to pick up the pieces. Now, they're coming onto the start-finish straight. The BMW, I'd say, is going to look the most powerful here, especially compared to the Ginetta. We're going to watch from the Fisher's perspective, really, and you can just see that even from this angle, the Ginetta is not gaining enough on the BMW to make it side by side into the first corner, which realistically is where you need to be if you want to make a move. In fact, Fisher here going for a bit of a dive down the inside, completely missing the corner. Wow, they took that way too fast, and they've shot. Oh god, they just overshot that corner completely, and Fisher there. I mean, that's not how you take that corner.
No. Fisher doing what I'd consider the right thing, let them by. I think in that time the BMW has in fact found a way. In fact, was the BMW already ahead of the Ginetta? I don't think it was. So obviously that's caused Stevenson to kind of go evasive, which has allowed Borodai just the way through. I'm not sure that's the way Borodai would like to get through, but in this sort of competition, I don't think it really matters how you get by as long as you do. I'm pretty certain they'll take that. As we see Borodai going very wide. Is that the Ginetta coming down on the inside of the second Lesmo? Just able to get through Fisher, nipping up the inside. Borodai going wide onto that green paint on the outside. Obviously in these conditions, very, very slippery. These guys obviously do have the traction control systems to keep them in check, but then that will also cost them a bit of time. Borodai left for dead at this point. That mistake has cost them. Fisher looking on the outside of Ascari onto the inside of the Ginetta. The Ginetta, obviously, this is where the Ginetta is going to be at its best. through the corners, and now the advantage is gone. Now this is advantage Aston. Can Fischer find their way through and make their way back up to challenge the likes of Boardman, Verstappen and Foch? But to do that, Fischer needs to get past Stevenson. And does the Aston have the legs to take this guy into Parabolica? I don't know if it's just looking on the outside, but again, going into the corner, this is where the Ginetta again has the advantage. Fischer needing to find the exit to maybe take a look down into T1, or even better, get by on the straight. The car may be powerful enough pulling into the slipstream, but can it be done?
Well, we're going to see here, you can see the slipstream's kicking in. The Jetta does not have the top speed it wants to have to defend this position. Fischer looking for the inside of T1 here. They might actually be ahead before they even get to T1. There's the BMW reappearing out of almost nowhere coming into this corner, but Fischer manages to nail it this time round, gets ahead before T1 is even finished, and now they're going to start to pull away from Stevenson behind. Borodai caught up as well. They are back in this fight, and I was going to talk about it, Joshua. Lesmo 2, when it's in the dry, you push it to the limit, you swing out as hard as you can and really take as much of the green stuff as possible to get the best exit. But in the wet, like you said, you touch the green stuff and you lose the car, you slip, and it's just all of your time disappears. And I'm actually surprised to see Borodai already caught up with the number 78 and 108 here, because honestly, I'd say they're about a second back by the time they actually got onto the straight. They've closed all of that just with the sheer speed of the BMW alone.
Well, I think it's more than just that, Tim. Before Foch set the fastest lap around about 2 laps ago, Borodai was actually holding that fastest lap. You saw the purple name tag. I'm fairly certain I saw that on Borodai anyway. So Borodai is carrying a fair bit of pace right now, and maybe just that little bit of clear air, and plus with the fact that Stevenson and Fischer were fighting, was just enough for Borodai to make up for that mistake, and staring again at the back of that Ginetta. Going down towards Parabolica now, this is where the BMW, again, I say the word advantage a lot, but you know, these two cars couldn't be any different in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And this is where Borodai is going to potentially have the run pulling into the slipstream, and not close enough to make a look, but maybe, you know, worrying Stevenson in the Ginetta there just a little bit, you know, thinking about their exit, thinking about how they're going to defend down into turn 1, because it's only a matter of time, especially with the pace Borodai is carrying, for that 98 BMW to be looking up the back of that Ginetta. You know, Fischer not exactly pulling away themselves either, so I don't know if Stevenson's going to have the pace to challenge Fischer, but you see the gap close up right there. Is Borodai going to take a look on the inside? They're thinking about it. They pull out of the slipstream, just trying to control the braking, and I don't know if that's going to result in contact. No, it doesn't. Borodai thinking better of it and tucking in, but no, just trying to fight ahead for another lap, and maybe too far away to make something happen into T2, into the second chicane, sorry, but, you know, anything is possible. Bryant still chasing down Ripper.
Yeah, I think this is the problem with the M2 cars for Brian right now, is that just in terms of momentum, it's really hard to keep these cars going. Although here you can see the slipstream for once on these M2s is actually making a difference. Tom Bryant closing in on Ripper towards the first corner. Not quite going to be able to get alongside this time around, but definitely seeing an actual difference this time. I mean, I was talking last week at Bull Ricard how these M2 Cup cars, they gain slipstream, it just look like it does anything with these, but it really, you could see it working there. Bryant really closed the gap, especially in the last part of the start-finish straight. Healy as well, showing us what the slipstream can do. Looking to overtake Waldecker, took to the inside for that corner, but not quite managing to find it completely as Waldecker defends, and again, Healy looking to take the inside of the second chicane, not going to be able to do so, and is going to have to tuck behind. But that, I think, is going to be the struggle of the M2 cars, is that they already have a hard time overtaking unless you're basically diving into a corner. Now, okay, fine, Monza's known for dive bombing into corner overtakes, but the M2 is going to struggle. It's Daly here looking to overtake. Head wound already alongside on the back straight. It's going to be clear by the time we get to the Parabolica corner, but can Daly in the BMW hold it through the corner where it looks like they're going to be ahead of the McLaren. The McLaren, let's be real, the only advantage it has here is in the braking points, and that's just gone through. So Daly, I expect now, will start to pull away and give himself a bit of distance before T1, but the McLaren's in the slipstream. Let's see if it's enough to help them get back alongside Daly. All they need to do is be close enough to really put those McLaren brakes into action. You can see them looking towards the outside. The McLaren can make this move happen around here if they're daring enough, but Daly missing their braking marker, going to overshoot the corner a little bit. The headwind going for the
no!
Make contact with Daly, which will spin Daly out onto the inside, but I've got to say that headwind looked like they had that clear, and I'm not 100% sure if it's just a case of Daly rejoining the track, maybe a little too much, but I don't know. That's going to be a hard one for the stewards to judge, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was close racing for sure. That's the one thing that can be said. Haley looking like they have the run on Waldecker. Again, we're seeing this slipstream. I think it's a combination of slipstream and there's so many exits to Parabolica. Do you keep it tight or do you run it out wide and get the power on sooner later? And there's pros and cons to each way of doing it. Haley just squeezing through, absolutely textbook overtake going down into the slow section there for T1. And Tim, I've just noticed something. We've gone almost a full race into race 1. There's only 6 minutes remaining now. We've gone all of qualifying, and we've not mentioned the M2 and their tyres yet.
We've not mentioned the tyres, but to defend us on that one, you did actually mention earlier how the wet tyres do last a little bit longer. A racer there, I think, just missed the corner, which is going to get... Oh, no, actually, that's Hajek missing the corner, going to give a racer a chance to go down the inside. Hajek really struggling to just rejoin the track there. Never mind, it's the other way around. A racer there was struggling to rejoin the track and keep it together as Hajek goes for a move on the overtake, managing to push the Porsche back through, and you can see going to Parabolica now. That racer is just not in striking distance, although using the McLaren brakes to their advantage, and it looks like Hajek slightly overshot Parabolica there. I think the McLaren might be starting to close back in. It's a really good exit onto the start from the straight. Now we're going to watch from the front cam to see just how much the slipstream plays here, and you can see already alongside the Porsche is the McLaren now, and going into T1, like I said, you can really push that McLaren around it. So good on the brakes, so you can really abuse it, especially on the outside. And again, the Porsche going way too deep into the corner is going to miss it, and you can just see them carrying a barrier with them across the cut-off area, and they're going to rejoin the track, but a racer will retake 7th place from the Porsche.
Yeah, and we're seeing this a lot as well with two cars going side by side. You think the car on the inside would have the advantage, but when you're trying to extend the braking zone as much as possible, then, obviously we're seeing a fair few cars now starting to make those mistakes and outbraking themselves, just trying to defend the inside position. And, I mean, that has altered the result of a fair few events. Even the race lead, Verstappen doing it earlier on in the race. This is Azure, was the pole sitter for the silver class in the GT4 category, now sitting in P3 behind Lilith and Hadjek. And Hadjek, we saw Hadjek kind of pushing up with the pros there for just a moment ago. And Azure now under pressure from Verstraeten, obviously not in the same class, but has gone backwards by a few positions. Stephen Quee looking to make the move on Hadjek. This will put Hadjek, Lilith and Goat into a bit of a line with no cars between them. Taking a look, not quite able to make it happen. Hadjek very nearly running into the back of, I believe that is Headwood. Headwood running wide on the exit of Ascari there. So, I mean, a bit of a cluster of cars, and definitely has shaken, this track and these conditions have done exactly how we predicted, has shaken the order up. And as I say that, we say the KTM isn't the quickest around here, but Foch has also just set fastest lap of the race so far.
Foch has just been absolutely dominating in the KTM today. I gotta say, the wet weather has absolutely been doing them favours, and just the driving standards in general. I mean, Foch has proved that they deserve to be in that first place spot at the moment. Stephen Quee approaching the first corner, trying to get neck and neck with Hajek, but you can see Headwound ahead. Going to be able to block Quee's braking point, and Hajek going to go for a late break, but will be enough to just hook that first corner together here. Headwound's fighting back and going to push Hajek wide, which gives Stephen Quee a chance to come round the outside of the Porsche here, and it looks like Hajek is going to be the one to lose out. You can see Lilith lurking just behind, ready to enter the fight with the leader for silver right now, but Stephen Queet still not fully clear yet, looking for the inside of Headwound. Neither the McLaren or the Chevrolet is clear right now. Hajek struggling to navigate their way through the traffic ahead, though. Gives Lilith a chance to catch up. Queet goes around the outside, overtaking Headwound. Headwound falls down behind Hajek, and even under pressure from Lilith as it stands. And it looks like the Chevrolet will come out on top here. Hajek in the Porsche will just pull away from Lilith despite falling into their clutches. And who's that that's fallen in between? I believe that's Headwound now, breaking up the silver leaders of this race. You can see Lilith has an absolute amazing exit on this corner here. Going to try and get past the McLaren, but looks like not Hajek, Headwound is going to defend. They're going to look for the outside, interestingly, going to Scary here. And I've got to say, I think that is the right call to make. We're just going to go back to you for a second here, Joshua, as Lilith goes for a move around the outside of Ascari. Not going to be able to do it, and will have to fall back behind Headwound. I've got to say, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the fighting going into the chicanes there, Josh. And in general, like, you saw all four of them basically at one point, Quee, Hajek, Headwound and Lilith, all had an opportunity at striking in the chicane and not being able to just straight and missing their brake marker. Gives Goat a little tap from behind. But yeah, interested to see your opinion. These chicanes, really dangerous to go for a move, especially when there's so many cars around. And is it better at that point just sit back and wait to pick up the pieces?
I mean, maybe. There's always a chance that two cars fighting up ahead will make a mistake. But I think at the same time, you kind of have to really think carefully about your defense. Obviously, speaking of defense right now, go in a bit of a boxed-in situation, trying to make a move, but with Lilith alongside, I'm not sure that's the smartest call to make. You've kind of got nowhere to kind of pull out there, but has made the move stick, even with the tap into the Parabolica. I'm not sure if Verstraeten really got too involved in that. I saw Go kind of outbrake a little bit, and I think tapped the back of Lilith, and that's got to be frustrating for Lilith as well. But no, going back to your point there, Tim, I think if you see cars fighting into a chicane, maybe, I mean, again, those cars are then compromised. You can then kind of, try to take the path of least resistance and then try to get an exit and drive around them. Or if you are involved in a scrap, every position, I mean, it's not even that every position counts, because obviously it's, with the Pro and Silver class, they're both fighting for their own leaderboards. But I think we mentioned this last week. It's always a bit of an ego boost for a Silver driver to finish ahead of some of the pros, and that might be in the heads of some of the drivers here tonight. Gert Fischer in P4 catching up to the back of Andy Boardman in the 69 Porsche, going down towards the run to Parabolica. The Porsche and the Aston seem very equally matched in terms of performance on a good day, but in the wet, I do think maybe the V8 has the advantage. And talking about the advantage, just that late braking, I think actually missed the braking marker, was able to sort it out, loses control just a little bit, catching a slide. And that is Foch coming across the line to win race 1 by 3.5 seconds, according to the delta on the left-hand side of the screen. So a fair bit ahead, but then again, the cars behind also fighting. Is that going to be... That's Fischer crossing the line sideways, but Boardman will be taking P3, Verstappen in P2.
Bosch in a KTM wins at Monza. Verstappen not able to reclose that gap. We're going to have a race down to the line for Goat and Headwound here, but unfortunately for Headwound, not going to be able to close that gap just enough on the start-finish straight. You can see the cars flying past on the start-finish straight as they cross the line here. Well, the BMW M2 Cup cars, they're still going at the moment. You can see now Rachenov closing in on Arnett. They're going to hope to get a move done on the final lap here. Race not over for these BMWs yet. I don't even think Ripper's finished. They haven't. So this is going to still be all to play for these cars. Tom Bright never managed to get back through. Marco Ripper is 1.2 seconds behind, so probably isn't going to have a chance to do it anymore unless Ripper messes up this corner. They will be your winner for the BMWs for race 1 here at Monza today, and they have absolutely nailed that final Parabolica of race 1. That means Marco Ripper in the 666 will be your race winner for race 1. Tom Bryant will come back in second, and Dom Healy in third place will round out the podium. Dominicus as well has absolutely dominated in their first race of the championship. They've got a 4-car gap to the next person in the same split as them, so they're going to cross the line in P1, and it looks like from the distances as well, Jamie Hunt will be P2 and Jurek will come across in P3. And I've got to say, Joshua, This is why I love Monza. What a race we've just had, and we're about to have one double the length to follow.
I can I can definitely see the enthusiasm, Tim, and I mean, I'm with you. I'm entirely with you. I think I'm sold from from a spectator's point of view. This track in these conditions, obviously these conditions aren't guaranteed for next race. Obviously, that goes without saying. But this track does provide this kind of racing. We've had close calls, we've had overtakes, we've had chases, we've had incidents, light ones, and not many of them. But from from our point of view here, it's had everything, and you can't ask for much more from a race.
You really can't, and Foch bringing it for a victory on the KTM. What a performance! I mean, none of us came into this race expecting the KTM to be on pole, let alone winning the race, and by a 3.5-second margin on Verstappen, who dominated here the last time around. I mean, Foch has got to be smiling from cheek to cheek, and like you say about how it can really motivate a driver getting a result like that. Foch going into race 2, I think, is going to be so pumped up that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I think the only way you're going to stop that KTM now is if you can really put pressure on it in the first few laps. Because, I mean, the pace was just unbeatable out there. It was fastest lap out after fastest lap. Foch was just dominating the field.
I mean, yeah, trading fastest laps, I believe, with Fisher towards the end there. I mean, it's again, we've said it before. We keep banging on the door of you don't expect the KTM to be able to do this at this track, but Foch definitely proving they have the pace, on pace alone to keep ahead. And I think you're right. I think whilst you're close to it, or unless you can keep up with it and just keep applying the pressure, just keep pushing in on the pressure points of that car, try to exploit where it's weak, try to maximize your exits onto off of the corners that lead onto the straights, and try to push the KTM onto an unfavorable line. That might be the only way that these guys are going to get around Foch, unless Foch makes a mistake. And given how consistent they've been, they read Verstappen like a book in the opening stages of race 1, with Verstappen having the inside by all means having the advantage, but just outbraking themselves and having to take a little bit of the runoff area, so allowing Foch the racing line, and to pull up a gap as well on top of that. And I don't think Verstappen really was able to kind of recover from that mistake. I think they actually lost positions and fell off the podium towards the end of the race. So it's, again, where momentum can work one way, momentum can also send you backwards as well. And that's something else to really consider during race 2.
Yeah, I mean, Foch's move on the T1 when they just held it back, let Verstappen make the mistake on T1, and then they could just follow through with as much speed as possible. That was a good read from Foch, and that just goes to show how much experience they have as a driver to almost predict that was going to happen based on the run down to T1 and how fast both the cars were going. And they took that risk and said, you know what? I'm willing to bet Verstappen hasn't calculated this right. I want to come back to this T1 point, actually, because you mentioned in the middle of race 1 there how going into T1, the inside line is the line you want to have. That's where you can, put a lot of pressure on the car. And I agree with you. That's the overtaking line. The inside line for T1 is the overtaking line. However, I will argue that rule has an exception. That exception is the McLaren. The McLaren here, I've done it so many times myself. I love watching it on other people as well. And we almost got to see it a couple of times in race 1. The McLaren has so much potential around the outside. The brakes on the McLaren completely unmatched. If you get your braking zone right in the McLaren on T1, you can throw yourself so fast around that corner that you barely lose momentum. And even when you're on the outside, you slingshot yourself around the car ahead of you. And then you've got the inside for turn 2, which means you could push them as far wide as you want on the exit. And that's the only exception to having the inside line on T1 there, is that there are some cars, it's not just the McLaren, but the McLaren finds it easiest. There are some cars that can make it work around the outside, and that is something that I want to see coming into race 2, is someone really just putting the pressure on around the outside. Now, I'm going to take a quick moment as we wait for race 2 to start here to mention our partners. We have Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and SimRacing.gp. They are at the bottom of your screen right now, and we'll be talking more about them after the race ends in race 2, and we'll just explain a bit about what each of them do. But well, coming into race 2, we've seen how race 1 turns out now, Joshua, with Foch just dominating the field. But there's still plenty of people left on track who I think can make some seriously good plays here. Do you have any predictions? Like, who are you looking at in race 2 to really stand out and make an impact?
I think the top 4. Legitimately just the top 4. I mean, Foch, racecraft to the extreme with Verstappen in the last race there. But then Fisher obviously got sent, very quickly down the back of the field in that one in the bit of a melee that was going on in the first couple of corners. But able to kind of pull it back, almost challenging for the podium in the end with Bourman. Bourman, king of consistency, I think, at that point as well, able to put it onto the podium there, and it was very, very close to kind of pulling a result there for Fisher. So don't discount Fisher. If Fisher can keep themselves out of trouble here, then they stand a really good chance.
Yeah, that's the thing with Fisher last race, obviously, is at one point they were down 7th. Like, they were behind the main pack. I'm not 100% sure how it happened. They obviously recovered and got all the way back up to 4th. But again, I'd like to see them really punching at the front from the beginning. Well, those of you who've joined us recently on Thursdays know that we go and pay a visit to Jesse Lee, my old friend from the commentary box, used to commentate with me, now likes to watch from the stands. And as you can see, just not happy with the weather at all today.
There's a
really
second
not
one.
dressed for it as well as... he's got his head out, it's not ideal in the rain. You can really feel the rain bouncing off the bald head of his. Sunglasses as well. I wouldn't say it's the best for this dark, sort of wet weather at the moment. So Jesse Lee maybe had a bit of a wardrobe malfunction this morning, but definitely not looking like they're enjoying the race right now. Probably hopes they're back in the warm commentary box. Well, we're still on the outlap for race 2 here, and like you said, any of those top 4 could be a big factor here, and I have to agree. Like I was saying, I think Fisher has a real opportunity to be battling for that front position from the get-go. And last race, I don't want to say it was disappointing, but I think Fisher could have done more. Of course, they got stuck at the beginning, put them down to 6th, and they spent their whole time trying to recover. Whereas this time around, I think if they can get a good start, then Fisher, Verstappen, Foch, and Boardman could be battling it out for the entire 40 minutes. I mean, it's what we saw last week at Paul Ricard.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ask for too much more than that. And I mean, what a track to do it on. There's so many more opportunities here. It's not just slipstream reliant. Then it's good that you have ghosting enabled in the formation lap, as I believe that was Hadcheck running through the back of his Azure Goat. And we have to be very careful what we show you now, says. I'm pretty certain that's how baby GT4s are made, but. But obviously we have ghosting enabled, so that's obviously a good thing. Didn't put drivers out before the races even started, as we head to make the run down to Parabolica. And I think one driver might not have hit drive in time. That's the 921. The 921. Who is that in pits at the moment? So they will start from the pit lane for this race. Not entirely certain who they are, but. I believe that might have been... No, it's not who I think it was.
Raphael Hull starting from the pit lane. I've got to say, I'm not 100% sure they're in race 1, so I'm wondering if they've just joined us for race 2 here. Of course, it is possible. You can just hop in and start from the back if you wish. I'm kind of hoping for their sake that they're an M2 Cup car and not a GT4, because otherwise they've got a lot of climbing to do. But coming around Parabolica, you can see everyone's getting ready for race 2. We predicted it might be dry by now. It's definitely wet still, and that's all going to be a factor as we come down towards turn 1. We're about to get started, and Joshua, I am so excited for how this race is going to turn out. 40 minutes of action here. Take us away.
Okay, so going towards the green light now. Foch really needs to have that start as we go green. Foch able to... a great start from Foch, but again, a great start from Verstappen too, just kind of keeping the gap. Foch pulling a little bit, Verstappen pulling into the slipstream, heading down towards T1. Boardman taking it up on the inside of Fisher. Fisher looking like they might lose the position here, but does have that inside line if they can get it around, and puts him almost on the inside of Verstappen. And there it is! There's the T1 curse! There we go! That's Boardman involved! That's Daly involved! That's Lilith, I think, making up a few positions there as well, making advantage of the situation like I said. And there's a second accident as well. I think that's Waldecker that's gone round. I think that's a couple of the cup cars involved. There's two others bonk off themselves. Boardman in the mix of M2 cars there, and I think that might have just put them down. And don't be fooled by the graphic at the moment. It does put Boardman in first, but that is Boardman, I believe, stuck in the pack of cup cars, trying to find their way through, and that is not how they wanted to start their race. And I think we might even have a yellow flag further up as well. The 440 involved there.
Oh, that was absolute chaos leading into turn 1 there, and I've got to say, not an ideal start for Boardman. Boardman, look, they were going down the inside of Fisher. They looked like they were going to have that corner together, but I'm not sure 100% what happened. Honestly, I was so focused on Verstappen and Forsch almost making contact that I didn't quite see what happened behind, but Boardman there found himself the wrong way, and that's just turn 1 Monza as we know it. It's absolute chaos, but for the survivors, that will be a very good start for them. Goat and Hajek currently leading for Straighten. Actually, no, the order doesn't currently sort itself out. Hajek, though, has had a very good start. They've got a 2-car split barrier to Lilith, who's in the same split as them behind for Straighten. They're going ever so wide on the exit of Ascari. You can see these cars are really struggling for grip, and it's understandable. This weather is so wet. Martin Lawrence looking for a move around the edge of Carlisle, coming down on the start finish straight here. They're almost neck and neck as they approach Parabolica. What can Martin Lawrence do in the BMW? Well, they just need to get a good exit out of this corner, and they'll have a huge advantage on the straight against the Porsche, but Carlisle really pushing Lawrence wide. He can take him right to the edge of the track, and that's exactly what that Porsche needs to do. But now you can see the BMW power kicking in as we enter the straight, and Lawrence steaming round down towards the outside of Carlisle for the first corner. They need to really be clear here, though, of the Porsche, because that BMW is not going to be able to compare in the turn 1 and 2 chicane. But I think Lawrence might just have it together here, going in towards the first corner, going to cut off Carlisle just before they make it through turn 1, and that was ever so close to yet another accident.
Yeah, I think we just saw a slight jink there from Carlisle. I think Carlisle might have been trying to let Lawrence through. Obviously, I've raced with Carlisle before, and there has been situations where if he knows a driver is quicker, he won't fight too hard. And yeah, you see Marco Ripper obviously respecting at the moment, but that is Headwound and Boardman getting through the cup cars, obviously caught up in that lap 1 turn 1 incident. And yeah, I mean, Boardman falling behind even further has cleared the M2 cars though, so that's good news for them, you know, on the second lap. But that is only 35 minutes to start catching up. I mean, Boardman, potential podium finisher here, potential race winner. You know, see the guys in contention for that kind of position been pushed so far down. Looking at the Lumi rank there, you see P18 on Boardman's car, so sitting in 18th position. I mean, it's a long way to make up.
Yeah, and for those of you that know, we have a drop round in this series where basically your worst result doesn't get counted, and it re-adds a bit of competitivity back into it, especially for a car that might have a bad race, or if someone can't make it to one race and they still have a chance to fight for the championship as well. And I was going to talk about it, but quickly to sort of keep going with my point that I was already starting to deviate from, is that Boardman now has already used their drop round. They signed out of race 1, which means coming here into race 3, not having a good result potentially in the feature race where it counts, this is going to hurt their championship fight, because these results will be counted, and Boardman here needs to hope to gain as many positions as possible, because we said going into this, race 2, double the points. It's the one you need to get the good result on, because it's where all the points for the championship come from, and Boardman being down 18th, behind still Tom Bryant, it's not where you want to be, and it's really gonna affect them. But just to show you how effective though that drop round can be in promoting the fighting, Fisher, who wasn't with us for race 1, they started with us at Paul Ricard in race 2. As you saw at the beginning, currently leading the championship standings, and that's because we now take into account the drop round as we're calculating the standings, which means Verstappen's best result wasn't quite enough to beat Fisher's best result. So it's been taken into account that Verstappen, despite probably having about 180 points in total, after the drop round would only have had 100. So that, I think, is quite an interesting addition, is that last championship we got to race 5 as the final race, and we're trying to calculate who's leading based on the drop round, because even with Jesse Lee enjoying the math like they usually do, couldn't work out who was leading because the drop round was playing a big factor. But I think going into this championship, what's interesting to see is that we're going to have that drop round recorded at the beginning of each race. And it just makes it so much easier to find out who exactly is in the best place right now. And that's Fischer, who's in third. So Verstappen, this will be a good result. Verstappen basically just needs to beat out Fischer in this race too here. And that will put them back fighting Fischer for the first place position in the championship.
Yeah, I mean, anyone really needs the kind of results. But as you say, the way the point system works, you know, if the race 2 is the important one, Daly getting a little bit of a wiggle on there on the exit of Ascari whilst chasing down a Razor in the 699 McLaren. Obviously, you'd expect the BMW to have the advantage going down here, but kind of negated that a little bit. You see, I think that's Lilith again in the Cayman, just a few cars up. Very distinctive colour scheme. Quickly back to the lead. You've got Samir Foch again holding P1, not under the pressure from Verstappen that they were at this point in the last race, but Verstappen also not making that mistake. And as you see, the top 3 cars still bunched up, pulling ahead away from the Ginetta. But you might also notice that there are a few gaps, but like between the Ginetta of Stevenson and the car and the 98 BMW of Borodai, there is a large amount of space where there should be other cars, but those are the cars that got collected in the lap 1 turn 1 incident. And it looks like Marco Ripper has passed Byron at some point along the way. Byron coming up along the outside. We've seen this work so many times. Oh wait, this is Dom Healy. Dom Healy making their way through Marco Ripper. Marco Ripper holding the inside line. Is it going to work? It kind of puts you at a bit of a disadvantage because you have to hold that inside line very tightly. Healy maybe getting the exit, but Ripper putting their car in between themselves and the car behind, just kind of cutting off Healy's run there.
This is the M2 cars, I remember. You can get as good an exit as you want. You're still not overtaking the car ahead of you once you get to the straight. It's got to happen as you enter the corner. You need to look for the move down the inside. You need to really chop up the person ahead's momentum. And you need to basically stick your car right down the inside before you get to the corner, because otherwise the move's not going to happen. You saw there Healy had much better exit than Ripper, but the car just doesn't have enough power even before they had to let off slightly, so that because Ripper cut off the gap, like Healy wasn't gaining enough. It wasn't going to be enough to clear by the end of the straight. So that's the problem with these M2 cars, that you have to make the move happen quickly, and Verstappen still trying to close the gap to Foch ahead. Now these cars can overtake on the straight, and slipstream does come into play here, and a car that's really struggling at the moment is the KTM in a straight line. It doesn't have that top speed that a lot of the other cars have, and I'm surprised it's had like this long, but you can see Verstappen just not in striking range right now. Foch does such a good job in the corners of keeping that gap as wide as possible, that by the time they get to the straight, they don't have to worry about the pressure from behind, because Verstappen simply isn't close enough to overtake. And that is where the KTM is performing the best, is in the corners, and Foch is absolutely showcasing that he knows that, and he's going to keep doing that even for the next 31 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be half an hour of total pressure. Daly on the brakes, almost running into the back of a Razor there. And we've seen that so many times now. That's Lawrence and Goat following in close pursuit just behind. Obviously, Daly trying to take on a Razor. Has the chance potentially going down into the second braking zone, but maybe not quite there in terms of being in the position with the pace. Sending it down the inside, definitely braking later than the 570. Squeezing in, getting a little bit shoulders out. I think that was slight contact between the front wheel.
Free wide.
Yeah, I think that is 3 wide. Oh, no! And that's a tap! That's a tap! That's just sent, I think that's a Razor round. And who got caught up in that? Was that Carlisle that was also involved? That's all. Assurance made it through. No, that was Lawrence involved. Oh, no, Lawrence, I think, is... Wait, Lawrence is behind Goat right now. So I think that might have been Carlisle involved in that incident.
I don't know, I think that was Lawrence. It looked like a BMW, but we'll see in a minute, because the scoreboard will update as we come across this section of the track here. Now I'm just waiting for it to update, but here you go, Daly, Goat, Lawrence. No, Lawrence is still in it. You're right, that is Lawrence lurking just behind. So who is that that's gone out then? A racer has returned to the pit lane. Them that got taken off the track there. I mean, I know I sound excited that they were going 3 wide there, but some of you may have heard the nervousness in my voice. Never a good idea to go 3 wide around Monza, and that showcases why. All it takes is a slight tap, even on the straight, And that is the end of the race for somebody there. The stewards going to be looking into that one as someone's gone daily, I think, has gone really wide. Coming out of the parabolica there, we can see Lawrence now chasing down go ahead the BMW really quick in a straight line. And like you said, again, it's quick in a straight line, and it's showcasing it. Even at Paul Ricard, like, it seemed like these BMWs were just overtaking 2 or 3 cars at a time, but the results just aren't showing it. I mean, Lawrence down in 12th. I thought they'd be higher by now. We've seen this BMW in a straight line. It's really dominated at Monza. You can see how quick those BMWs are, but the results just aren't coming from it. And I'm interested across this whole championship as these BMWs, I mean, these are the races where they needed to perform well, right? Bourman making contact with Hedwood there. These two trying to recover since the lap 1. Turn 1 incident, Boardman and Hedwin coming together, both going to stay on track, but Boardman not happy with that, going to flash their lights. They think they should have had the right of way in that corner there, maybe feeling that Hedwin cut them off a bit. But it's just not been their race. They've not been able to recover, and despite the fact that they've caught up to the rear of the GT4 pack, not being able to gain any ground on anyone else, and it's a real shame because, like you said, Bourman was in contention for a podium here today.
Yeah, it's especially frustrating for Boardman, surely, because being stuck at the back behind Headwound, Boardman in qualifying and practice has had the pace on Headwound, so maybe Headwound's maybe they're holding each other up, maybe that they're really hindering each other, maybe it would actually really help Headwound, because Headwound's not a slouch in themselves. They have the pace to overtake some of the silver drive. Obviously, there's a difference between pro and silver in the first place, but maybe them fighting and squabbling at the back here is a detriment. They have to kind of work together at this point to try to pull themselves further up the grid, and this squabbling is not helping at all. You see Martin Lawrence here trying to make a move onto this would be Azure Goat going down into Parabolica. A lot of fighting going on between McLaren's, BMWs, and one of the Porsches. Just going wide, taking the later apex, trying to get the exit, which will obviously play it to the BMW's favour. Trying to run on the outside. There they go. There's the outside line we were talking about earlier on in the race. Lawrence trying to put the power down, to put the pressure on, and I mean, a fair way back at the moment, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to really try to outbrake as you're going down into T1, especially with the difference in how good that McLaren is on the brakes.
Yeah, like the McLaren, the biggest advantage for the McLaren at Monza is the brakes, and of course with a braking zone like T1, where, let's be real, the car with the best brakes and the car that gets the braking right is going to win. The McLaren just is so much more dominant, and it really helps, especially people like Azure Goat, as they try and defend down into T1. Well, here's Fischer. They've closed the gap to Verstappen ahead. I think something's happened to Verstappen, maybe a missed corner or something, but Fischer now in their clutches, trying to look for a move around the outside of Verstappen here. We're going through the Lesmos, and you can see Fischer trying to size up Verstappen. They're both going wide onto the green curb, and you've got to be careful in the wet, because as we saw on Borodai earlier, it can really throw off the car and ruin the momentum. But the number 78 has closed in on the 747. That's just helped Foch to build a bigger gap yet again. You can see the KTM right now has about a 2-second gap. It's now 2.7 seconds coming out of Sector 2, and Foch has got to be loving this week so far. It's not 2 brilliant races, but Fischer now trying to close the gap, going a little bit wide there on the exit of Ascari. You can see they're just trying to get the slipstream to pull them through. They don't really want to overtake before the corner, because you're going to want the slipstream coming towards turn 1 more, because it's the longest straight, but it's not going to matter anyway, because Verstappen's still ahead. Both cars trying to take the corner as perfectly as possible, and again, I'm not sure Fischer's close enough. The slipstream will help pull them, but I think Verstappen's probably safe for another lap or so.
Yeah, I mean, again, similar situation to Headwind and Boardman. In that situation, Boardman obviously has gotten ahead there if you've been paying attention to the left-hand side graphic. But Verstappen and Fischer may be holding each other up a little bit if they want to catch Foch. I mean, look at Foch, the fastest lap of the race again so far. So the lead still gaining, as you see Fischer just pulling up alongside Verstappen there, maybe missing the braking spot just a little bit. And, I mean, again, that could have resulted in a little bit of contact, and we've seen what that could happen. Even light contact at T1 Monza can spin a car around and ruin its race. Jay Daly tucking alongside Lilith. Azure tucking in along behind Daly. Daly trying to find a way of getting out of this sandwich a little bit of the Silvers. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys aren't in the, we've said it before, these guys aren't in the same championship. Daly will want to clear Lilith and to try to chase on Verstappen. right now, Daly's losing points. Even if Daly gets through, if you see Verstraeten just in the distance there, and so will Daly. When that Porsche moves out the way, you're seeing who you're chasing, and you're losing time to them. You're not able to kind of catch up to, and that's got to be frustrating for the Triple R Racing driver.
Yeah, Lilith really has to weigh up here how long they can defend from Daly from safely without losing too much time. I mean, they've got right now, Daly's obviously not fighting directly in the split, like they're in a different split to each other, but Goat is. And Goat is just behind Daly. You can literally see Goat lurking behind as well, and Lawrence behind them. So honestly, I think Lilith just wants to keep the barrier there, and as long as Daly's not going for some moves that are really slowing Lilith down, I support this idea of not really letting them through. I mean, you've got the barrier. If Daly goes through, fine, whatever, but it's Goat that they're worrying about, and that's I think is a good play from Grim Lilith. It's just continue to hold off Daly. It's not costing them too much time. You know, it's not stressing out the Porsche too much. Actually, you can see Daly now is going for a move around the outside, and Lawrence as well going for a move on Goat. This might be a double BMW overtake, but Daly has cleared Lilith. I'm wondering if Lilith slightly yielded here on the straight to help let Daly through without letting Goat through. Because the other thing is if Daly pulls off an overtake that pushes Lilith wide, Goat being that close could have just followed through as Fisher goes for a move down the inside of Verstappen, being able to push Verstappen to the edge of the corner. Verstappen managing to make both corners, not having to run off track, but will get pushed back by Fisher, and that is an overtake for second place there. Well, now we're going into turn one yet again, this time with the 4 fighting for 9th as it stands, and it looks like Lawrence still at the back of the pack. Goat now fighting Lilith. But yeah, as I was saying, Josh, Lilith, I think it was best let Daly through where it's safe there, because if Daly had pushed Lilith wide, Goat was in striking distance almost instantly, and it just had to be done on a straight like that where Lilith could slightly lift, let Daly through safely, and they can both continue on their ways without too much stress.
But this is also danger zone for Lilith as well. If Azure gets by as well, and again along the same vein, as you're taking a look on the inside there, but if Azure gets by and so does Lawrence, then then Azure then has the car buffer as well. So that car buffer, in my opinion, with Lilith, that is, I dare say, a bit of a lifeline as we miss the apex there, running onto the slippery stuff. As you're taking the better line late on the brakes, pulling right up. You see in the rear view Lawrence also, but I'm nearly running into the back of Azure there, not anticipating having to slam on the brakes so soon. But there's another factor we haven't factored in, Tim, and that is within the next half hour or so, the track is going to start drying out. But again, this is going to affect all the cars, and I don't know, but towards the end of the race, we are not going to see anything dry. And it's not Lawrence pulling up along the outside of Ascari. Maybe, again, we're seeing a lot of cars just outbrake themselves. I don't know if it's being opportunistic or just genuine mistakes. I'd imagine it's a little bit of both. But Lawrence running on the outside there. Lilith under pressure, fighting for that P2 in class. Hadjek is way off in the distance at this point. You see them just going around Parabolica there in the bright coloured, in the yellow, orange, and green 735 Cayman there. But no, as I say, we're focusing on the battle for second and third in the silver class. Lawrence getting right into the mix, trying to clear them, because again, Lawrence, let's not forget, is in a fight with Daly. That's BMW on BMW action, trying to, these two silvers sandwiched between. They're holding Lawrence up. At this point in time, Daly is able to kind of make up the gap to Verstraeten. And that's Azure, and just avoiding contact. Daly going wide on the inside there. There's so much going on all at once, it's actually really hard to keep up with.
I mean, if you're Lawrence right now, you're probably a little bit frustrated, honestly. You just want to clear these two cars ahead of you. Lawrence clearly has the speed for it as well, but just isn't able to find it. And with Lilith and Goat fighting like this, really, really hard for Lawrence to find a way through as Goat goes for yet another move down the inside, slightly missing their braking point. He's going to have to rejoin the track, although looks like they're not going to return the position maybe here. I'm interested to see that. I'd have thought they'd return their position. Lilith clearly thought it as well. They flash Goat. Clearly to say, can you let me back through? And now they're bumping each other. This is not what we want to see, although what's happening here is Goat finally yielding the position to Lilith now, and Lawrence trying to fight their way through. I'm wondering if that's maybe why Goat didn't give the position back, because they didn't want to let out to Lawrence, but the BMW onto the straight is going to have a huge advantage here. So Goat, one little slip up, a missed braking marker going to the chicane, really going to affect the outcome of this battle. And Lilith, you can see, not a huge advantage, but enough to just breathe and take a step back for a minute. But go.
Going for it, and that is going to be contact, and that is Azure that is going to pay the price from that one more than Lawrence. Lawrence, having a little bit of a tap, but able to carry on the way, but that will spin Azure out. And that might even put them under a little bit of pressure from Carlisle. Boardman, I don't know if that was evasive. I don't know if that was evasive action, but that's Boardman just making up another position there, sliding around the stricken car of Azure. And there's Carlisle in the background as well. And Headwood. Headwood also affected by the lap 1 turn 1 incident, able to make up some more positions. And only 2 cars now separating them between Boardman and themselves. But this is what I meant. Maybe them fighting each other at the start, maybe this was holding them back. And again, without the sorts of a strategy change, or with the track not drying out as well as maybe it could, you're not even going to see that come into play in terms of helping the guys at the back make up a few positions. So Boardman has everything to play for right now. Headwood has to find a way around Carlisle and not able to find a way around T1, just a bit too far back. And this is Fisher down in P4, so we think something might have happened here. Looking at the replay, goes a little bit deep into T1, Verstappen just a little bit of a tap sending them round, and that has cost them the position to Stevenson in the Ginetta. The Ginetta currently on the podium. We have a KTM and a Ginetta on the podium here at Monza, and I don't think anyone could have seen this happening.
Stevenson putting the pressure on Verstappen as well. We might be about to have a KTM in first and a Ginetta in second, and that really would be an interesting sight to see today. Well, we're kind of going to watch Stephen Quay as they hold off Jordan Daly from behind. You can see Daly just all over the back of Quay. No, this is Quay attacking Hadjek, never mind. I was going to make a point about how fast Daly's suddenly gone, but it's not in play. Quay here attacking Hadjek, looking for a way through the Porsche ahead, and you can see the Chevrolet now is not making that corner quite with the entrance it wanted. Going to look for a better exit here, and hopefully for them take the Cayman on the straight. Looks like they might have had a really good exit here. You can see the slipstream coming into play. They're about to swerve out. They're going to try and take the corner neck and neck with Hadjek. Hadjek, though, on the inside, going to have a real power play here to try and push that Chevrolet as wide as they possibly can. You can see Queen now lining up to get the slipstream on the start-finish straight. This is where we find out whether Queen has got the corner right. Did they get the exit how they wanted it to? And it looks like they did. The slipstream coming into play here, helping Queen to get down the inside of Hadjek, and it looks like by the time they get to the corner, Queen's going to be more than clear of the Porsche. Queen played that to absolute perfection. They just need to hold it together as we approach turn 1. The Cayman absolutely not out of the race yet, but the 26 Chevrolet will thread it through and will be ahead by the time we exit the first chicane.
Just so looking at Stevenson now, just pulling up to Verstappen. I mean, this is a heck of a challenge going on right now. I don't think anyone could have fallen. I know, I mean, going back. Okay. Let's take a moment here, Tim. At the start of the race, you asked me, who did we think would be running in for contention? Who was going to stand out? And we said that the first
drive-through.
That's Fisher in the drive-through. Is that track limits? That's
got to be. There's no live stewarding, so drive-through has to be track limits.
Yeah. Oh no! Again, consolidating my point. We said the top 4 drivers between Foch, Verstappen, Fisher, and I believe it was Boardman as well. We assumed that any one of them could have taken the win here if the pressure to Foch was put on. First of all, that hasn't happened. Foch has just run away with this, and Boardman being involved in lap on turn 1, we all see it was a possibility, but you never expect that to really happen. We joke about it; it's a meme. But this is Boardman. This is the podium fight. You don't expect that to happen, and it happened. And up until this point now, with only 15 minutes of the race left remaining, I don't think anyone could have foresaw the KTM and the Ginetta both on the podium, the overall podium for this race. As we've seen Dom Healy chasing down Ripper. Bryant at some point along the way has gotten past Ripper as well, so Bryant has retaken their lead. So that's Dom Healy trying to find a way through down into the chicane. not quite able to make it there, but getting the exit. But as we know, getting the exit isn't everything. These touring cars do fight wheel to wheel quite well, and we've seen Ripper park their car in the way of Healy more than once during the course of this race, and that's got to be frustrating for Healy trying to find a way through.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming back to that point of the BMW M2 cars just struggling to overtake in general here. And here we go, Stevenson trying to make an overtake happen on Verstappen. And as you can see, there's a couple of M2s dotted around because these cars have caught up to the blue flags and they're now attempting to lap the M2s as quickly as possible. Now, I mean, blue flags always come into play. People get excited about them anyway. But for those of you that joined us last week, you will remember how much the blue flags affected the race. Verstappen was able to overtake, well, they were able to catch up, overtake, and then put distance on Boardman just by the blue flags alone. And Stevenson's going to be hoping to do that to Verstappen today. As you can see them, they've cleared one BMW. They're going to have to clear a couple more. Well, here's Healy and Ripper battling it out as they come into the final corner here. Looks like Ripper had a slight slip coming out of that final corner. That's going to help Healy to close the gap, although Healy not getting a good exit is going to try and close this. But again, the M2 cars, without the momentum, even with the slipstream, it's so hard to get any gap sort of close on the car ahead of you, and you can see that really come into play. Well, here's Stevenson still trying to keep it close between Verstappen. This is a close gap, just 2 tenths, but the Ginetta, not the fastest in the straight line, does have to gain an advantage. As you can see, Verstappen on the inside of the corner, and Stevenson getting a good exit will have a huge advantage over Verstappen here. Only problem, Joshua, is there's a BMW in the way. Is this going to play a part as Verstappen manages to clear it? Stevenson manages to clear it as well, but it pushes the Ginetta back, and Stevenson not able to use the slipstream to their advantage because there was a BMW on the straight that was just causing too much problems. There was no room to overtake, and that, I think, is going to play a huge factor in this next 12 minutes. As you can try and go for an overtake, but there's going to be a BMW there, as again you can see a BMW in the track on the racing line. You got to clear them quickly, and Stevenson needs to do it a lot quicker if they want to put pressure on Verstappen here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and that shows so multiple things. Obviously, the BMW, unfortunate for Stevenson, it got in the way, and it's kind of preventable. Could have been an overtake. Speaking of overtakes, we're looking at Martin Lawrence now catching up to the back of Daly. Looking a move on the outside, I believe, of the second chicane, not able to really make anything of it, but Daly's gone deep. Daly having to cut across the inside, and that will have cost them time. Can Lawrence make something happen into the first Lesmo? I think they will, and that's Carlisle also putting Daly under a little bit of pressure. Verstraeten, sorry, that's sorry, it's very similarly coloured Porsches there, but that is Verstraeten putting Lawrence under pressure as well. So Daly almost losing 2 positions due to that one, let's face it, very small mistake under defense from Lawrence. And that's Hadjek with a drive-through penalty. So we are starting to see, at this point in the race, drivers, especially with the conditions, the slippery conditions, drivers starting to take liberties with those track limits, and some of them paying the cost for it.
That's Hadjek, that's the leader of Silver. Hadjek, who was leading the Silver split race for the second time round today, has just got a drive-through penalty, and that means that Lilith now will be leading the Silver split. And for Hadjek, that is just a huge downturn because they had a massive gap, and well, now we know one of the reasons why is because maybe pushing the corner a little bit too much to their limits here. As Daly and Lawrence have yet another scrap, go through the parabolic. It looks like Daly here gonna have a run around the outside. No, is Daly down the inside as Lawrence goes for a run down the outside. They're going to try and use the slipstream to their advantage here, but Verstraeten lurking in the shadows, ready to try and follow Lawrence through as well here. Not going to be able to do so is either car, but because Daly is making a brick wall, there's a BMW in the way too. That is not helping Verstraeten as they get caught up behind, and because of that, Daly's still going to be ahead. Verstraeten has had to yield their attack on Lawrence as well as they get pushed wide by the BMW. And again, it's these M2 Cup cars causing so much trouble for the GT4s. But going back to what I was saying, Hadjek leading the race from riches back down to rags again. Picks up a drive through, and that's going to knock them down into, I believe they're going to be fighting GOAT here. They're actually probably a lot lower than that, we'll find out, but either way, Lilith has been handed a very good opportunity at a victory here, and with just 10 minutes to go, this should be a fairly good defense for them.
Yeah, I mean, what a buffer for Lilith here. I mean, Boardman behind as well. I mean, not a name you kind of want. Boardman showing their pace, and that's Daly holding on to that position there from Lawrence, and I believe that's one of the. Yeah, it's one of the cut cars once again, when the M2 is still getting in the way a little bit there. And that has allowed Daly to kind of pull a bit of a gap, going from side to side, side by side, with that little bit of straight line, a bit of clear air between themselves and Lawrence, our neck chasing down the 303 M2 Cup of Hunt there. Going down from the exit of Parabolica. Obviously, both these cars, looking at the M2s, it's been a while since we actually looked at the M2s fighting for position. But here we are, and these cars, it looks like Arnek has actually had a bit of a hit front and rear. If what I'm seeing here isn't mistaken, so that might have, that M2 might have a little bit of damage. So depending on how that car's carrying it, it might slow down. Stephen Key in the background there in the sole Camaro of the race, making their way by under blue flag conditions. But I don't know if Arnek will have the legs here to take it into P1. It looks like they have the slipstream. It looked like they are able to, at least from that camera angle, it looked like they did. But from this one, that gap showing being kind of the same. Maybe a slight touch there. That's going to run into Stephen Key. Stephen Key holding on to their position didn't cost them too much, but that has just put Jamie Hunt. I mean, where is Jamie? Where did Jamie reach out of that? I mean, I don't see them on the infield there, but. Oh no, that was again T. We said it before. No matter what we make the joke, we say it's lap one. It's not just lap one, and we said it before that it doesn't even have to be in the same class. Blue flag cars can give you a problem if you are unlucky. Speaking of being lucky, that's Lilith, and that is Straighten looking at overtaking Lilith there. So yes, yes, it's Lilith gone by for Straighten at some point, because when I looked at it before, Boardman was immediately behind Lilith, so I don't know if Lilith has actually made up that position, going side by side into the Curva Grande, but no, they will lose that position back to Verstraeten anyway, so actually that's not the Curva Grande, that's the first Lesmo. So just a little bit of a correction there, but Lilith is absolutely manic and flashing the lights, not happy with whatever we just kind of missed in the confusion there. But going back to the front of the grid, that's the Janessa taking on Verstappen, able to close in that gap, going down into the Parabolica. And are they able to get the exit? No BMWs to get in the way this time. Can the Janessa make all the difference down into T1?
Well, you're seeing now that Verstappen almost didn't hold it together, but did catch the car, and that's helped them just keep ahead of Stevenson here. But Stevenson and the Ginetta still trying to keep this gap close. Doesn't look like they're going to have enough slipstream. Or Paul, where is that Aston Martin going? They're just disappearing to the distance. Stevenson looking for him down the inside and makes contact with the 747 Aston Martin. Both cars will return to the track in their original positions, but Verstappen and Stevenson there making contact with just 6.5 minutes left to go in race 2. If Stevenson wants to get that move done, they're just going to have to be that little bit more careful as Fisher approaches GOAT coming towards turn 1.
Yeah, obviously, both drivers having setbacks here. Fisher having that drive-through, Azure having that spin. And Fisher, I think at this point, Azure knows there's no real point in trying to fight it. These guys are in different classes. There's no points to be gained or lost. And GOAT does have the buffer between Lilith and Carlisle. So, with 6 minutes of the race left to go, I think GOAT has understood. There's no point in trying to fight Lilith. If Lilith makes a mistake, they make a mistake. And, there's no point. There's no point in trying to. No point in trying to ruin your race, and that's another drive-through penalty, this time for the 171 of Martin Lawrence. So, yeah, we said about these track limits before. We're definitely starting to see them come into play now.
Yeah, these cars really starting to rack up those warnings, and they are going. Oh, the drive-through has disappeared. Where has Lawrence gone? I think Lawrence might have left. But either way, the drive-through is really starting to come into play now. The warnings they're picking up, and with a 40-minute race, they're going to happen. It's rain, it's Monza, you can pick up those warnings, and as you can see, it's affected a lot of cars so far, even affecting how the races have turned out. Of course, Hajek earlier was leading for the silver split. He's now finding himself in 4th in class, and that's not good for them at all. Lilith currently in 1st with a 3-car barrier as well. Well, here is the fight that we have been interested in for the last part of this race. There's a BMW in the way, there's Verstappen approaching T1, and Stevenson, you can see there, is lurking, although it looks like the BMW might be blocking Stevenson's chance here, as Verstappen messes up in the first corner, going to rejoin the track. Where does Stevenson go? There's a BMW in the way. They just managed to thread the gap as they come through Curva Grande here, and that is what the Ginetta has been looking for this entire time. Verstappen messing up T1 for the 2nd time today and will be regretting it. It's now in their court to try and get back that 2nd place, but for now, everybody, we have a KTM in 1st and a Ginetta in 2nd at Monza.
With only 4 minutes of the race remaining too. I mean, it goes to show, you know, Stevenson just putting on the pressure for Verstappen making the mistake in the last race too. And, you know, with enough pressure, you know, obviously you start exposing weak spots. You know, as soon as you know that this driver in particular maybe doesn't do so well under the sort of pressure, you know, you can keep applying and keep pushing. And, you know, without really necessarily even going for a move, you can force them into a mistake. And that is exactly what Stevenson has managed to do, and making up for the contact in the previous lap. 3 Porsches in a line here, but different classes. Boardman putting Verstappen under a fair bit of pressure, but Verstappen also held up by Lilith. I think that was Dominicus in the M2 getting out the way there, using the indicators to indicate to the drivers behind, you know, to just, you know, pass me on the left hand side. You know, they're pulling off to the side of the track there, just, you know, not getting in the way. And, you know, with only 3 minutes of the race remaining, a trade of cars. This is Tom Bryant. This is your race leader for the M2 class. 2 laps down on the GT4s, just to show the pace deficit between the 2 classes of car. And obviously that's Verstappen as well, still trying to chase down the Ginetta. Might actually have a bit of a run there, maybe held up a little bit by Tom there. But again, I don't think this battle's over, Tim. I think we are going to see more of this. I think we are going to see more of this battle between Verstappen and Stevenson. But before we get to that, that's Boardman. That's Boardman making their way through from the back of that three Porsche pack to the front around Parabolica. We didn't quite see exactly how they made that happen, but maybe just abrupt themselves a bit. We saw Lilith flashing the lights and not happy about something in that exchange, but just able enough to pull ahead and pull a gap. And this is where the race becomes damage control for Bob. And as soon as the lap on turn 1 happened, as soon as they got sent down the grid, this race became from chasing a haul of points to just damage control. The drop ram's already been used, as we've previously said. So this is about, you know, trying to limit the hit as much as possible to take into the next round to keep their championship hopes alive. And they certainly do have the pace for it, as we saw a Paul Ricard here today, and coming from the back of the field up to P7. A bit of a gap between themselves and Daly, but anything, as we've seen with the drive-thrus and some of the mistakes that have happened here, don't discount anything.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I agree. You know, Bournemouth's done an amazing recovery. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, though. It's not enough. 7th place, it's going to get Bournemouth 26 points. Fine, it's still points. It's, you know, it's good. It's what you want. But if you compare it to Foch right now, Foch is bringing in 68 points just for this race win alone. You know, they're 14 seconds clear. They're 14 seconds clear of the Ginetta. That KTM is absolutely flying as they come into the last lap here. But like I was saying, Boardman, despite this amazing recovery, it's not quite enough for this championship. And you know, like I said, they've used their drop round already. This is really going to affect their fighting chance right now. And I think Bournemouth's really going to feel it after this race. They need a bit of a miracle as we go into the final 2 rounds. But going back to the M2s, Healy still trying to find their way through Ripper. This has been a race that's basically been going on for the last 20 minutes or so as it stands. And it just doesn't seem like there's any way for this M2 to get past. He looks like they've tried everything at this point, but Ripper stayed firm.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I had a very similar race on Sunday. Again, wet, drying conditions. Just you start ahead of a car, and you've just put under that pressure. And we've seen Verstappen make mistakes as well in this race and the last. Trying to keep a cool head is not the easiest thing in the world. You can guarantee that that Ripper will be sweating in that 666 BMW. Healy desperately trying to find a way through it. As you said, this battle's been going on for the best part of 20 minutes now. Having that kind of mental endurance is not easy, especially with Ripper making small mistakes like that, and that might be the opening that Healy needs to make advantage going down into the first Lesmo, having the inside line and pulling up alongside, so Ripper cannot just cut along, Ripper can't just cut across at this point. And having the inside line into Lesmo too. This is that was Ripper just rejoining the track and just ahead of Healy there, and making a mistake, going very, very deep, and maybe this is the opportunity Healy needs, having the slipstream and pulling into a more optimum line. Is it going to be enough to pull alongside, even just slightly, just preventing Ripper from cutting across? I think it is enough, but braking earlier, just backing out of the move, and with nothing left on the clock, Healy is running out of chances to get past Ripper here.
What does Healy have to do to overtake Ripper? Well, someone who's had a great race today is Foch as they cross the line for the second time today in first place. Ladies and gentlemen, the KTM won both race 1 and race 2 for a big move. This is going down in history. It's Tom Bryan, for the first time, is going to cross the line in first place in the class, the BMW M2.
There we go!
Take the victory in race 2. Christian's happy, Josh is happy, we're all happy for Tom as they go smacking into the wall to end the race here. What a performance from Mr. Bryan at the end of race 2 there. You can't hear this right now, but Christian is rolling on the floor. He's laughing, he's cheering at the top of his lungs. He is so happy about this finish.
I think Christian just broke something in the background.
There was a lot of noise. Christian might have just broken everything there. But Bosch coming home in the KTM to take first place for the second time today. William Stevenson in the Ginetta coming in second. There is no way I'd have predicted this result. Verstappen coming third place in race 2. Lilith will take home first for the silver class in GT4. Goat will be in second. And Carlisle will round out the podium. Hajek missing out after the drive-through penalty. Looking down at the BMWs now, Tom Bryan, as you just heard there, came home in first place. Ripper was in second, and Healy never managed to find their way through. They finished third, and Dominicus won their second race of the season. They came home in first place in the AM. Jamie Hunt was in second, and I'm not quite sure who finished third there for the BMWs in the AM class. Just scroll down for me there, Christian. Thank you very much. That was Marshall coming home in third. So a good result from lots of people all round. But what a race, Josh. And I got to tell you, there are some people who are going to be smiling and going to be very, very happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, Christian is crying, just so everyone is aware. But no, I think there's definitely been some upsets in that. I mean, KTM Ginetta on the podium here at Monza. I don't think anyone expected that. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to catch my breath there a bit. That got a bit hectic here in the box. But no, I mean, what a race. Race 1 was good. Race 2 just blew that out of the park. And we say this all the time, we say, the racing was good. And, it feels almost, it must feel like almost an obligation at some point. But I can tell you, this wasn't an obligation. I think this might be the best race in my time commentating, that I've commentated on here at RCI.
That was absolutely brilliant, and I'm going to bring the mood down slightly for a minute, although not too much, but this was, of course, the final race. I will be commentating with Christian as the broadcaster for the Thursday Championship. For those of you that joined us way back then, we came in, I think it's season 3, both me and Christian started out as a broadcaster and commentating duo. But this will be the final race we do for Thursdays, as I'm going to have to move, unfortunately, and Christian might as well. But either way, What a send-off we've just had. And as you said, Josh, Christian was in tears, not because of that he's not doing it with me for the final time, simply because of that amazing finish. I mean, I say that Monza's amazing. I love Monza as a track, and it brung the action today. It was absolutely brilliant. And I've got to agree with you, I don't think I've had a better race ever. That was so good, and it's been a pleasure commentating it with you. Well, I do have to, again, bring up the partners that have helped us make this amazing race possible. We have racedepartment.com. They are your source of sim racing news and mods. You've probably heard them announce recently that the new American tracks will be arriving as DLC later on this month. AK Informatica, they provide our server solutions. Driver61.com. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by using the discount code. The link's in the description, and you can redeem it by going to driver61.com. Fanatec are your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment. You can use their affiliate link. It's also in the description. It won't cost you anything, and it helps us to run the servers. It helps with the server costs as well. And simracing.gp, you tie the public lobbies. Do you love the action that you see on Thursdays? Would you love to be involved in some community-based sim racing? Well, if you join simracing.gp, they're a quality community-based sim racing group, and it's all completely free. You can just hop into a race straight away. Wow, I've got to take a couple of deep breaths there, Joshua. What a race we have just had, and I can't believe how that turned out. I mean, Foch has got to be smiling right now. They've won 2 races in the KTM. We've had a Ginetta in second. Stevenson's had their first podium of the season. And Tom Bryan bringing home their first ever first place in a Thursday championship. It's the moment so many of us have been waiting for. Josh, what are your thoughts on today?
I mean, brain fried completely. So much to take in all at once. But can you ask for anything better? Can you know?
No.
Could tonight have turned out any better, or any more hectic than it has? I mean, my thoughts. I mean, again, a great haul of points for Foch there. That's going to help them out in the championship towards the end. We're only a few races in, a few races left to go. It's still everything to play for. Fisher losing out maybe a little bit at the end there. So it's going to be interesting to see that, factoring in drop rounds. It's going to be interesting to see where everyone sits in the end here. Great was. I mean, what more can you say?
Yeah, I have to agree. And yeah, we'll find out exactly next week here how those championship standings are looking. Well, usually I say you can join us tomorrow for the Friday GT3 Championship. Unfortunately, we're having a bit of a break from that at the moment. It's the summer break. We're going to be bringing you back, though, Season 7 shortly, and the dates will be announced. So remember, you can go to our website, racerci.com, and you can check out when the championships are going to start back up, and you can get involved yourself. All you have to do is have ACC and the relevant DLCs installed, and you can join in with the racing. Night Owl will be back on Saturday, June the 25th. That will be Ryan Mawson on the broadcasting tool. Jesse Lee will be leading you through the comms with Ted Edwards on the co-comms as well. Then going back, we'll be back on Monday too for the final race of the Monday British Masters. That's with Ryan and Doughton. So Mawson and Gill will be helping you through that one. And then, well, next week we'll be back for round 4. We are going to Silverstone for round 4 of the GT4 and BMW M2 Cup. And I've got to say, even if it's half as exciting as the race we've had today, you will not want to miss out on it. And if you don't want to miss out on it, you will want to hit that bell icon so you get notifications whenever we go live. Consider subscribing as well so that you can catch up on all of our races after they've gone live too. And also, why not hit the like button for this race? I mean, it certainly earned it. We've had some brilliant racing today. And I've got to say, thank you, Christian. It's been a pleasure commentating alongside you. Thank you, Joshua, so much for joining me in these last couple of races. Of course, you'll be joining me next week for my final race of Thursday. And of course, thank you to everyone in the chat as well. We've not talked to you guys a lot today, but I have been reading your messages. You have done absolutely well. You've just been brilliant to talk to today, and it's been a phenomenal race all round. So before we wrap it up, Josh, is there anything? I imagine your throat hurts at this point, but is there anything else you'd like to say?
Again, I think this race has spoken for itself. You know, we've seen upsets, we've seen unexpected results. You know, looking at the chat now, Blade Wolf Kakikai, I completely missed out. They got a class podium too. So, I mean, what more can you say at that point?
I mean, yeah, well done, Blade Wolf, as well. You've had a great race, and so many people have had good races too. But yeah, like you said, Josh, it's been the best race ever. Thank you so much, Christian, as well, for the message you've put up on stream. Like I said, it's been a pleasure working with you. But well, you'll see us all soon, everybody. Thank you for joining, and good night.